At exactly 4:32 p.m. on May 27th, America will be back in business. But it's not what you think. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, that is the date that NASA set on Friday for the return to space from American soil of American astronauts. The space shuttle was retired back in 2011. And since then, anytime American astronauts have gone to space, they've been riders on Russian rockets at a cost of upwards of $83 million per seat. This launch will actually go from Kennedy Space Center Pad 39A, which I'm sure you're well familiar with, and will include two veteran astronauts. I want to give their names here, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. Hurley, by the way, both of them have been to space multiple times. Hurley was on the most recent space shuttle flight, the last space shuttle flight, and both men are married to U.S. astronauts. Bill, just because I know that you are the creator of the Apollo 11 What We Saw series and a space kid from way back, talk to me about the significance of this moment where we're actually officially announcing a date for this.
There is one thing about this flight that is monumental, and that is the name that's going to be on the side of the capsule.
And that name will be?
Dragon.
And what is so monumental about Dragon? Are you saying because it's a SpaceX capsule rather than a government-produced, so to speak, NASA capsule?
It's not that it's a SpaceX capsule as opposed to a Boeing capsule, which I'll get to in a minute. It is that it is the result of private enterprise. Now, I know a lot of people have said, well, Elon Musk takes subsidies from the government and so on, but he's also providing a service for the government, and he basically put a lot of his personal money into revolutionizing the space transport era. And this will be the first time Americans have flown in space, as you say, for 9 years. That's a decade of being on the ground virtually, and is just
from
shocking
American
and appalling.
Soil.
That means on an American rocket. Yeah,
yes. That
means we're not hitchhiking. It means we're actually driving ourselves there for a change again. What Elon Musk has done is so revolutionary. It's the breakthrough, and it's a high honor. It's not going to mean much, I guess, for people who aren't really into aerospace, but without question, probably the greatest single honor of my life has gotten to be close friends with Burt Rutan, who is a revolutionary aircraft designer who back in 2004 decided NASA wasn't doing anything, so he decided to build his own spaceship, so he did. And he got Paul Allen to put up some money, built his own launch system, his own ground team. And another person I've gotten to know relatively well, Mike Melville, became the first civilian astronaut. There are hundreds of people that have been into space, but Mike Melville was the first one that went into outer space. It was a suborbital flight, without going as a member of a government. He was a private citizen. And so not only has SpaceX basically come in and filled the place that Boeing and all these other companies that no longer exist, like North American, Grumman, and so on, used to fill. But SpaceX this entire launch is revolutionary because the SpaceX launch system, which has been in place for several years now, is revolutionary to the degree that it is something that could not have been done during the Apollo era. It takes very sophisticated flight computers to be able to bring those rocket boosters back down and have them land on the pad which they were launched from. I know they've had a couple of cases where the booster that lands out in the Atlantic because it's too far towards orbit to come back to Kennedy Space Center, a couple cases where those things have fallen over the side. Be honest with you, that barge needs to be 30 or 40 times larger than it is. They should put a permanent, like an oil platform out there or something. But my point is that what Elon Musk has done is he has done something that seemed up until that time to be impossible, with the exception of something like what the space shuttle was supposed to be. Just give me a quick second for this. The original plan for the space shuttle was that it would be an orbital winged vehicle that would sit on the back of a larger winged vehicle, and they would take off together horizontally, climb up to altitude. The bottom vehicle would enter a high alpha climb, and then the orbiter would detach and go to orbit. And the genius of that idea, which was not the space shuttle we got, the genius of that idea was that then the booster aircraft would come down and land, and then the orbiter could land, either one of them could land at any decent sized airport, could land at LAX if they wanted to, probably land at, at Van Nuys if they wanted to. and then just simply refuel it and go. And so that's the key phrase, right? Refuel it and go. And to do that with a rocket, with a vertical ascent rocket, was something that I don't think anybody imagined was possible. But that's what he's done. When you launch a rocket, a traditional rocket, a non-SpaceX rocket, I should say, in order to get the tiny little payload, whether it's men or satellites or whatever, into orbit, the huge mass of the rocket, 95% or greater, gets thrown away into the ocean. All of those engines cost millions of dollars. They end up in the ocean. All of it ends up in the ocean. And for these things to be able to do their job, come back and land, and simply be refurbished or refueled, and it's not going to be long before it's just refueled. Some of these boosters have flown 10 times or more. The entire equation changes, Scott. Now you no longer have to pay for millions and millions of dollars of rocket engines and rocket components. Now, essentially, I'm simplifying, but essentially you have to pay for the gas, which is kerosene and liquid oxygen, about as much as milk per gallon. So it's a game changer. And I am so proud that it is SpaceX going to be doing this. He's worked very hard at it. He would have been able to do it years ago if NASA had not insisted on an escape tower system for the capsule. And there was a lot of discussion about whether the escape tower was worth the wait and so on. Nevertheless, it's there.
Bill, I thought it was interesting that it's not just a SpaceX constructed rocket from a SpaceX design, but it's actually owned and operated by SpaceX. So in fact, the only NASA part of this is the humans, the NASA astronaut. I'm not saying there's no contribution from NASA at all, but I'm just saying the private company owns the rocket and will be conducting the launch.
And once these test flights are over, the astronauts will be SpaceX astronauts too. And that will put NASA back into, needless to say, my love for the Apollo program and what NASA did between, let's say 1957 and 1980, 81, up until Challenger even. I have undying respect for. But the bottom line is that NASA is a massive government agency. It's a bureaucracy. And it's spent resources by coordinating private enterprise for the Apollo program. The components for Apollo were built by hundreds of different companies, and you get right down to it. But the Apollo command module, service module was made by North American. The lunar module was made by Grumman. Boeing built some of the boosters, and so on and so on. What's especially interesting today, and I don't want to pile on Boeing because I'm a fan of Boeing as a general rule, but when they did the most recent cost-benefit analysis in terms of systems for something that NASA wanted, of I don't know how many actual serious submissions there were, but I think there were at least 4, and there might have been as many as 6. Boeing came in dead last in terms of what it would cost versus what it delivered. It was so far behind the others that they just simply removed it from further consideration.
Do you think that's just because of their success has led to massive overhead that makes it difficult for them to be nimble?
No question. That's precisely what it is. And the main reason I'm so excited about the SpaceX thing is not only that it's a return to space, but it is the beginning of what I called, and I'm not the only person to call it this, this launch is going to be another milestone in Space Age 2, Space Race 2 if you want it, but Space Age 2. The first Space Age started with Yuri Gagarin and conceivably ended with the last of the space shuttle flights. It was driven by government spending huge amounts of taxpayer dollars, and the reason that the space shuttle wasn't the elegant, safe, inexpensive, reusable program that it was supposed to be was that while that initial design was funded, Congress, over the course of years of development, kept cutting money from the program. And so engineers had to build these workarounds and went from a horizontal takeoff airplane to a vertical takeoff stack, and the solid rocket boosters were not part of the original things. They're what killed the Challenger. The external tank wasn't part of the original design. That's what killed Columbia. And when you're dealing with a private company, if you make a commitment to spend your resources on that, there's nobody going to come around and start tinkering with your designs when you're halfway there. So it's not just a return to space flight for Americans. It is the beginning of space flight, manned space flight. This launch will be the beginning of manned space flight for profit. And while that makes some people's hair stand on end, you really have to understand that if you believe that spaceflight is a money-losing venture, and it has been throughout the entire history of spaceflight, if you think that planetary exploration can continue indefinitely as a money-losing venture, then you don't understand anything about how anything works. Government can't continue to do that, nor can anyone else. If it turns out that going into space is something that will make you money, then there's a future for it. Not take rapacious capitalism out of your mind if you find that so revolting. The bottom line is that if there is an incentive to go that is beyond goodwill or all these other intangibles that have not done us any good at all since the end of 1973 when the last Apollo mission flew, then you've got a real incentive to keep going. A few days ago, I think it was a few days ago, maybe it was a little bit longer. In any event, an asteroid flew past the Earth. This happens frequently. It was 5 or 6 times the distance to the moon and not a threat. Unlike most asteroids, which are composed of dust and rubble, this one was fairly solid. And best estimates of this particular small asteroid that went tumbling past the Earth very quickly was that asteroid contained platinum, significant amount of platinum. Want to guess how much platinum is in that asteroid? Just as a rough guess?
I'm don't even know how to gauge the...
Come on, take a shot.
A bajillion pounds.
Dollars worth.
Trillions of dollars. I don't know.
$5 trillion, yes. If that thing had hundreds of billions of dollars worth of platinum in it, it'd be worth going to get. But $5,000 billion that's just sitting out there, just waiting to be brought home. And remember, it's hard to get heavy stuff up into orbit, but it's not so hard to bring it back down again. Just as a single example, as one example only, that asteroid is an indication of where the future of spaceflight will be. I heard that President Trump had said just a few days ago that he was going to authorize whatever authorization he needed to do to allow mining on the moon. You may not think there's much to mine on the moon, but as it turns out, eons of solar radiation produce a substance on the surface of the moon. I want to say it's helium-3, but I'm not exactly sure of the name of it. In any event, it's the kind of stuff that you really need if you're going to do fusion reactors. And its entire surface of the moon is covered with the stuff, and we can't make it down here. So this is a huge day. And even if something goes wrong with that flight, it's a huge day. And SpaceX to me is an example. Look, SpaceX consists of a couple hundred engineers based in Hawthorne, just over the hill here. Many of them very young millennials, to their undying credit, tremendous engineers. And SpaceX, this private company that a single American is basically started by writing a check from his own pocket, has done and continued to do things that the European Union can't do, that the Russians can't do, that the Chinese can't do, and even that the Americans can't do, that the American government can't do. They're doing it, and they're knocking it out of the park, and I am as excited as I can be. I'll be watching that live. Maybe we'll do a live right angle on that.
We've done that before. I find it fascinating that especially with a character like Elon Musk, because if you're to believe the popular press, Musk is kind of like constantly hurtling along the precipice of solvency with everything he's doing. I mean, at times you think, well, Tesla's the most amazing company ever. And then it's like, wow, are they going to be able to meet their sales goals in order to keep funding this thing? And because he is such a cowboy, so to speak, and being able to then interface with NASA and work together with this massive 50-year-old bureaucracy, you just wonder how they made that relationship work.
I hope this doesn't offend Bert's feelings, what I'm about to say, but the great geniuses that move us forward are people who have their toes over the edge in terms of near insanity. They're people whose ability to think outside the box is so extraordinary that just regular life causes them some significant problems, you know. Elon Musk, I've seen Elon Musk on television interviews, several of them, where I was convinced he was either completely stoned, completely high, or completely out of his mind. And he may have been all three. But that's not the point. the point is that he's actually done it. And to those people who have a problem with him taking subsidies, on a philosophical level, I do as well. But on another level, it's not like I'm violating my principles. This is in the economic interest of the United States. This kind of subsidy, to me, opening up pathways to a new world that will present unimaginable. A $5 trillion asteroid, you round up 5 of those and your national debt's gone. The investment, and it's still a significant amount of his own money, the investment in the case of Elon Musk and SpaceX is to put Americans back in space, and that's in the national interest of the United States of America. Very rapidly, this is going to turn the corner to be something that is actually making money. And to the degree that SpaceX makes money, that's more money that goes back into the tax pot to pay for the subsidies that he got. And furthermore, as all of the industries and companies that take root in space as a result of Elon Musk's vision, that's all additional revenue that's good for the country and the government and all the rest. To say that he's living on the edge with things like Tesla and so on, to me is the best indication out there that Elon Musk is living, he's pushing the outside of the envelope. Everybody's heard that term from the right stuff. Nobody knows what it means, but just very, very briefly, an aircraft's speed and its airspeed, its altitude, its ceiling, and so on. You can graph these things on a chart and you can see here's its maximum airspeed, here's the maximum altitude, and so on. That's called a flight envelope. And anything that the airplane can do will be inside this flight envelope. And when people say they're pushing the envelope, what that means is they are right at the border of what is presumed to be possible, and then they're going further than what was thought was possible, and now there's a new possible. And that is human progress in a nutshell, and Elon Musk is, without question, no matter what you may think of him personally, without question, one of the most remarkable people that have ever lived in human history. He forget just the electric cars, forget SpaceX, the amount of savvy that he has in terms of image, the idea of putting a red convertible in orbit and playing David Bowie music and having a screenshot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the recovery barge in the Atlantic that brings the boosters back has official name, and it's not the Endurance or the Resolute. It's called Of Course I Still Love You. And all of this together, plus the hyperlink thing. You know, I know it sounds like I'm getting paid, but I'm not, but I'd certainly be willing to be.
The Hyperloop?
Hyperloop, yeah. The problem with going from New York to Los Angeles at supersonic speeds is it creates a sonic boom. And it takes a lot of fuel to fly an airplane through the atmosphere that creates that much drag and so on. It's very energy expensive. His idea of a tunnel where you evacuate the air in front of the capsule so that the capsule is essentially moving through a vacuum or near to, and is essentially being powered by the air pressure behind it. It's just a giant blow dart. Absolutely could change the world. And since it's underground, or at least part of it would be, I imagine, I don't know, you can travel faster on the land than you can in the air using Hyperloop. And whether that particular design of his succeeds or not, the ability to go from LA to New York in half an hour is not only convenient for those of us who have to travel to the West Coast every now and then, to the East Coast rather, but will revolutionize business and again, create multifold increases, orders of magnitude increases in the productivity of the American economy. And the Chinese aren't doing this. The Chinese have barely managed to build a tiny little space station, and they're talking about going back to the moon. Well, I think Elon Musk is going back to the moon. Donald Trump wants to go back to the moon too, by the way. Nothing would make me happier than to watch the Chinese landing on the moon, planting the flag, having the whole ceremony, and then just panning slightly to the left and seeing a couple of Americans leaning against their brand new lunar rover with the, cherry, candy apple red with chrome fins and just, a little golf clap.
Let me ask one final question here, Bill.
Sure.
This is a particular time in American history that is fraught. It seems like nothing as you watch the news, it's nothing but 24/7 coverage of this pandemic and the economic and political consequences thereof. Talk to me about the significance of doing this launch, if it should go off on time on May 27th, the significance of doing this launch at this moment in American history?
This launch, I think historians could mark this launch as a fork in the road. And the fork, obviously it's a spectrum, but the two extremes are. It was a launch that marked the end of American spaceflight and human spaceflight as fear and pandemics ravaged the globe, and the political classes and the media tore the country to shreds, and so on and so forth. Or historians could look at that May 27th, was it?
Yes.
They could look at May 27th, 2020 as the milestone where the entire philosophical, moral, economic potential of exploring the solar system actually began in earnest, where Space Race 1, moving from Gagarin to the retirement of the space shuttle, let's say, or certainly the end of the Apollo program. Space Race 1 was sort of an experimental system to see if we could actually do it. The actual real ability to have space be genuinely the final frontier, an actual place to go and work, not just a place to visit, not just a place to go and plant a flag, a place to go to work, accomplish goals, make money, increase the prosperity of the entire world, and basically continue this dream of exploration that has been squashed on Earth for the last 100 years or so, not quite that long, 50 years or so. There is no longer a place on the Earth you can go that's not been explored, maybe not footprint by footprint, but basically there's nowhere you can go on this planet where if you're carrying a satellite phone, you can't call for help. And it is in the American nature to be explorers. That's what we do. That's how we're built. I am convinced by by some significant genetic evidence that Americans have a genetic component for exploration and risk-taking, and it's not a question of the people here having superior genes or biology, but if you have an entire nation that at least that significant numbers of it, huge numbers of it, in fact, everybody descended from people who decided that rather than staying at home and enduring the potato famine or paying these taxes to emperors and kings and all the rest of it, decided to take a risk, basically leave everything they have behind, carry what they could carry with them, set sail for a world they've never seen before, with the optimism and the faith that when they got there, they'd be able to make a better lives for themselves. These are the people that we are descended from. And the further back you go in American history, the more time you've had to actually devolve that. It's the newest immigrants who are the ones who are showing the most of that American spirit of adventure and risk-taking and faith and optimism and know-how and self-sufficiency. That's what this country is all about. And this country needs a frontier. And we haven't had one for a long time. And I think it's going to be an amazing thing. It's going to be a beautiful thing. And to say that Elon Musk's companies have always flirted with disaster in terms of finances, Elon Musk absolutely nailed what the purpose of a company like his should be doing. He had said that some companies like to say failure is not an option. Well, he said failure is an option here. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. If you're not failing, you are not pushing the envelope. If you're not failing, you don't know where the limits are. The only way you know where the limits are is to fail. When you fail, it can be expensive in terms of hardware. It can be expensive in terms of lives. But the one thing that we seem to have gotten absolutely nailed in commercial aviation and in aerospace as well, is that if we have to pay that price, that ultimate price in people's lives, then we have, and we had damn well better continue to make sure that the people that we lose learning what we didn't know are honored by making sure that that particular mistake doesn't happen again, so that we can go out and make new mistakes and make sure that those don't happen again. And that's how you get from here to the stars, baby.
And one of those Americans born overseas is Elon Musk himself, born in Pretoria, South Africa, an immigrant to the United States. Still a citizen, by the way, of the United States of America, as well as South Africa and Canada, which is, I believe, where he initially moved when he left South Africa. We are excited to be part of this moment in history. We're grateful to the people who made it possible for us to produce these programs and help to inspire you with a vision of a better tomorrow. Those people are the members at BillWhittle.com who pay on a monthly and annual basis to make it possible for us to produce and distribute these shows. If you have not yet joined their ranks, you can do so today by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that Become a Member link. By the way, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the homepage, you'll find a big link to Bill's Apollo 11 What We Saw series, which you're going to want to watch all 4 episodes of that. And after you're done that, at the top of the page, you'll find a link to Bill's Cold War What We Saw series, which you'll enjoy as well. And finally, we want to thank our friends over at the Patriot Post who have come alongside of us in a co-promotional effort and have offered to the people who are watching right now, and that means you, the opportunity to get 2 free things. One is a daily alert by email of what they're posting at their conservative site that's filled with opinion and news and humor. And for signing up for that free email, you're also going to get the Patriots Primer on American liberty, and no time like the present to brush up your knowledge on what it means to enjoy liberty in these United States of America. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.